Part 104. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 1071. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 dazzling laser beams shot out from the body of the giant humanoid machine, instantly cutting the metal centipede wrapped around it into 4 pieces. At the same time, the few people who boarded the giant humanoid machine had locked the position of the laser and directly used their strongest attack methods. The scattered energy particles hit the armor, leaving dense burn marks. The 3 out-of-control laser beams turned to the inside, dismembering the giant humanoid machine into dozens of pieces in just a few seconds. The giant object that was more than a kilometer collapsed, and those pale fragments began to turn into sand after disintegrating, and were unable to become independent individuals with the ability to move on their own again. Jolajitu and others were floating in the air, looking down at the giant machinery that collapsed like a demolished building, and couldn't help but take a deep breath. "We won, is this?" The Hound standing on the deck stayed in place, his hands still holding the position of holding the missile launcher on his shoulders, until the powdery remains of the giant machine swept over him, covering him completely. After the man was wrapped up as if he had just been fished out of a pile of flour, he suddenly realized, "Damn it, I actually won." He wanted to cheer loudly and curse loudly, although the excitement in his heart was indescribable. His body seemed to no longer obey the instructions of his consciousness. The Hound only felt waves of dizziness coming from the depths of his mind. This was the drug. The overdose caused serious sequelae. Previously, I could rely on my own secretion and external injection of adrenaline to keep me from fainting. But now, as soon as the tense state is relieved, irresistible fatigue and sleepiness immediately come back. It's good if you win. The Hound slowly closed his eyes, and all the muscles in his body relaxed. But just before losing consciousness, he directly locked the joints of the power armor, allowing the armor to support his limp body, and always remain standing. Posture. Doo-doo. The piercing siren he had always hated rang inside the helmet, but he could no longer hear it, nor could he curse anymore. In the lower right corner of the helmet's internal display screen, the line representing the heartbeat frequency has become a straight line with no more fluctuations. "Old dog," Layton's voice sounded in the communication channel, with a hint of caution. "Old dog, are you asleep?" "Damn, old dog. Old dog, don't scare me." "Old thing, you are, just say something. You can even curse me a few times." Layton's voice became frightened and broken, and for a moment he was suddenly at a loss. He stood stupidly in front of the console, looking at the column with the Hound code in the life monitoring device. The border color of that column has changed from red to gray, all data has been reset to 0, and dazzling white fonts are displayed in the middle of the Hound's head. Vital signs have disappeared. The 7 cold and unemotional Chinese characters were like the sunny side of the twin moons, drawing the warmth out of Layton's body bit by bit. Layton raised his hand with some difficulty and gently touched the holographic screen with his stiff fingers. A circle of ripples rippled from the touched position. Information review in progress. Review completed, the information is correct. The target's vital signs have completely disappeared and death is confirmed. "Ah!" Layton suddenly roared and hit the screen with his fist. However, the holographic projection screen did not exist in reality. His fist went directly through it, but it made Layton lose his center of gravity. He staggered and fell on the guardrail of the console. After Yvonne and others heard Layton's voice, they immediately fell from the air and found the location of the Hound. The Hound's hands were holding the missile launcher, and his waist was straightened under the support of the armor. He raised his head slightly and looked up at the chest of the original humanoid giant machine, but now that the humanoid giant weapon had disappeared, his sight could not be seen at all. Unimpeded travel through space, direct sight of Alpha in the distance assuming he could still see. Without saying a word, Yvonne took out the medical equipment he carried with him and connected the 2 cables to the interface reserved on the outside of the power armor on the Hound. His normal left hand quickly typed on the keyboard. The tentacles rolled out a lot of syringes from the backpack and inserted them one by one into the external injection port of the Hound armor. 5 minutes later, Ivan stopped all operations, stood up, and silently shook his head at the others. "Is there no chance?" Chi Hanfan asked softly. "All the organs in the body are severely exhausted, with multiple fatal injuries and dozens of times the overdose of drugs. The old dog can persist until the humanoid giant machine disintegrates." "This is already a miracle in itself," Ivan said. "His body enhancement level is not very high, and his drug tolerance is not comparable to that of those modified people. When he injected those drugs, he should have known his ending." "Can't you even preserve your consciousness?" Chi Hanfan asked again. "His consciousness is not condensed enough, it completely dissipates after the death of the body," Ivan said. "Even if you use the energy of the alien god to peel off the remaining consciousness from the body, for him, it can only be regarded as torture. That's all." "What the hell are you trying to do, old man?" Layton's mood finally collapsed. "Obviously he has no abilities, and his level of enhancement is not high. Why do you have to charge into the battle yourself? Damn it! Can't you sit peacefully in the command room? With your little fighting power, wouldn't it be the same on the battlefield with or without you? Aren't you most afraid of death? Why are you not afraid today? Why? You damn answer me." "I remember Nick told me in another casual chat," Chi Hanfan said. "He told me that when he was still in the army, he often emphasized one thing with his officers, that when charging you should shout 'come on me' instead of 'come on me.' He said, if the leader doesn't dare to risk his life, then who has the right to let his subordinates die for him? Sometimes he is very smart, and sometimes he is just like a humming idiot. Damn, he is really stupid." Layton cursed and gradually began to let out low whimpering. The sound, accompanied by the white noise of electric current, echoed in the communication channel. Ivan unplugged the cable and syringe plugged into the Hound, took a deep breath, and reached out to wipe off the layer of white powder covering the visor of the Hound's helmet. The Hound closed his eyes and looked relaxed, as if he was having a good dream. "Good night, old dog." Ivan gently patted the Hound's helmet and whispered. It's not over yet." "The war is not over yet." Layton clenched his teeth and shouted in tears, "The war is not over yet. We have to help Kaylan. If Crescent Fortress falls, old dog, the old dog died in vain. Layton, check the hangar." "How many X-type high-speed shuttles are left?" Chi Hanfan said solemnly. "The X-type high-speed shuttle is an ultra-high-speed space fighter that only existed on concept drawings half a year ago. The X is named after the 4 overlapping wings. With a large rocket thruster and an explosive thruster at the tail, the X-type shuttle can reach a maximum speed of Mach 27 in a space environment. The crew must be enhanced humans of level 4 or above, and be in a life safety can only be ensured in a fully enclosed anti-load cabin. This was originally a piece of equipment developed to explore the space surrounding Alpha Star, but because the exploration plan was stranded, this type of shuttle has never been produced. Until Kaylan took out the semi-finished design drawing from Heijing's database and threw it to the engineering department of the Hunting God Hunting Group. There are still 6 planes left. Counting the pilots, we can only send 18 people to support Kaylan. Layton replied with a sniffle. Although the X-type high-speed shuttle is not small in size, due to the need to configure an anti-load cabin, a shuttle can only carry 3 crew members, and its weapon systems are relatively lacking. This thing originally needs many improvements. But because the war broke out too suddenly, we could only use the prototype aircraft to catch up with the ducks and put it on the shelves. But the only good news is that emptying out its ammunition compartment can just fit into it a crouched-down blasphemer mecha. The mecha does not need the protection of an anti-ship cabin, and the tiles located inside the mecha Lianjingna doesn't need to enter the anti-load cabin. In this case, there will be 19 people. The size of the fleet that bypassed Yagunakter and attacked the Crescent Fortress was even larger than the part they had just eliminated. the rush of 19 people to help felt like a drop in the bucket. We can't control that much. What if we are the straw that breaks the camel's back? Chi Hanfan said loudly. Leighton is right, the war is not over yet. Jolajitu, go and choose one. A group of people with sufficient personal strength are required to come, and the minimum physical enhancement level is required to be above level 5. Leighton, immediately open the hangar permissions and teleport the remaining 6 X-type shuttles to the deck. With the sacrifice of the hunting dog, Chi Hanfan naturally became the most suitable fighting candidate among the top leaders of the god hunting group. Although he was not the strongest, he had the most commanding experience. This responsibility naturally fell on him. Body. Ivan, 33, how are you two doing? Chi Hanfan turned to look at the two people standing on the other side. The tentacles growing out of Ivan's right arm were squirming in the vacuum. In the battle just now, many tentacles were destroyed. Although the tentacles have the ability to self-recover, recovery requires the consumption of energy and nutrients. Not only are the number of Ivan's tentacles now much smaller than when he joined the battlefield, but their length and diameter are also far less than before. Those new tentacles look extremely childish and do not look like they have combat effectiveness at all. As for 33, except for the Hound, it is probably in the worst condition among the few people, even with 1/10,000,000th unit of supernatural energy supplement. In order to spawn the giant metal centipede just now, it almost drained itself of its own strength. At this time, the 2 points of fire in the skull's eye sockets flickered and flickered, as if they would be completely extinguished at any time. I'm okay, as long as there are enough nutrients, the part of the seed of corrosion can be restored, Ivan said. 33 is a bit overdrawn, he can no longer withstand a replenishment of ability god's energy. Why don't you stay 33? Chi Hanfan turned his head and looked directly at the fire in the skeleton's eyes. The skeleton shook his head, waved his hand slightly, and a line of text appeared on the deck between the two. My remaining power is always stronger than an ordinary soldier. There is also a large amount of nano-alloy on Crescent Fortress, I can at least play a supporting role. But if you continue to use this ability, you will be like Nick. I'm already a dead person. 33 continued to answer using the words that appeared on the deck. When I received the ability God Energy Supplement for the second time, my remaining time was compressed to less than 4 hours. Even if you don't let me participate in the battle, my consciousness will soon dissipate. Okay, count you in. Chi Hanfan gritted his teeth, let's go. Time was running out, so he didn't say anything more and floated directly to an X-type shuttle that was teleported out. But before Chi Hanfan opened the cockpit, the hatch opened by itself. The person lying in the anti-load cabin in the driver's position was none other than Leighton. Major Chi, now that you are the temporary commander, you should stay and take charge of Yagonactor, Leighton said in the communication channel. I should be allowed to do things like charge into battle. You went to Crescent Fortress, what about Yagonactor? I don't know how to control this thing, Chi Hanfan asked. The battle in Yagonactor is over. Major Chi, you don't need to do anything. Just sit in the control room and give orders. If the second commander also dies in front of the battle, the situation will be terrible. It's really going to be a mess. In addition, people need to deal with the aftermath of Yagonactor's side. I'm not good at this kind of work, and people who are good at it have become part of the aftermath. It's better to stay. Chi Hanfan wanted to say something else, but found that he could not find a reason to refute Leighton. Stay a little far away, be careful not to get burned by the tail flames. After confirming that the blasphemer Mecha entered the cabin and Akira Asano and Jolajitu also got into the anti-load cabin, Leighton decisively started the engine. I'll leave this to you. If Crescent Fortress's Star Destroyer cannon fails to blast out, take Yagonactor and the people on the ship and escape as far away as possible. After a word, 6 X-type shuttles flew out from the deck of Yagonactor, and in the blink of an eye they turned into 6 flashing points of light. PS Thanks for the 100 starting coins you rewarded for killing Brother Squidward. I can't stand you but I can't kill him. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 1072. Crescent Fortress, Crater 4. The old moon in the double moon is a natural satellite captured by the gravity of Alpha Star, while the new moon is an artificial satellite built from scratch by the Alpha civilization. Although it is artificial, from the appearance of the planet, the new moon there is not much difference between the old moon and the old moon. The appearance of the new moon is also covered by a layer of crust composed of rock base. The average thickness of this crust is about 20,000 meters, and the surface is covered with large and small nested craters. However, unlike the craters on the surface of the moon, which was once the Earth's satellite, all the craters on the surface of the new moon are artificial and are not created by meteorites. Both the new moon and the old moon have powerful self-defense facilities. These facilities can not only intercept all aircraft and weapons approaching the double moon, but also destroy all meteorites flying towards the double moon. In the past tens of thousands of years, there is not a piece of diameter meteorites exceeding 1 meter can fall on the surface of double moon. As for the craters on the surface of double moon observed by the Archeans, each one is actually a fully automated defense position that is carefully disguised. Crater 4 is the largest crater on the side of the crescent moon facing Alpha. It has a diameter of 620 kilometers, which is more than twice the size of the largest crater Bailey on the moon. But in fact, Crater 4 is a fire circle is formed by 70,000 giant anti-aircraft turrets. These giant turrets, which are equivalent to 30-story buildings, are buried in the mountains of the crater. The positions of the muzzles are hidden in the shadows cast by the mountain peaks. Middle. The enemy fleet has entered the range of anti-aircraft fire. The anti-aircraft fire saturation of Crater 4 is 19%. Do you want to activate the interception system? Seleni's shadow stood behind Kaylan and asked. With only 19% firepower, can it be stopped? Kaylan asked. I need to correct that the available firepower of Crater 4 is 19%. Other defensive positions on the front of the crescent moon have all been offline. If calculated based on the overall defensive firepower, the ratio of available firepower on the front of the crescent moon is now 2.7%. What are the chances of a successful interception? According to calculations, the existing firepower can eliminate 72% of the enemies, and the remaining 28% of the enemies will break through the fire blockade and enter the crescent fortress. I'm just wondering why such a big fortress doesn't have any robot troops. If there were a group of autonomous combat machines, we could at least have some street fights with each other, Kaylan complained. There is a high probability that the program of the autonomous combat machine will be contaminated and evolve into an corrosive AI similar to the Hive Mastermind, and it has extremely high concealment and permeability. For the safety of the Twin Moon Fortress, the Fortress Master must be removed. Except for controlling AI, any equipment with AI programs is prohibited from being brought into the fortress, Selene replied. Is it too late to rush the work now? There should be something like an assembly line and fully automated production facility inside the fortress, right? Fully automated factories also require AI for management, so they are also banned in Crescent Fortress. Selene's answer completely erased Ian's last trace of fantasy. In fact, you have obtained the rights of Crescent Fortress. All permissions, anything that is not on the list of available features, are not available in Fortress. Then the resources I can use now, are really pitiful. Kaylan glanced at the list that was directly transmitted into his brain, and sighed, let's start the fire interception first. How long is how long? If it doesn't work, you will be responsible for maintaining the charging program of the Star Destroyer cannon later, and I will go outside to fend off those monsters. Is this okay? After the charging process is started, the holder of the authority does not need to stay in the central control room, Selene said, but if you need to stop the charging, you must do it yourself. No need to stop, just launch after charging. Kaylan took a step back and walked out of the light beam. I'll leave this place to you. In addition, I have to trouble you to send me outside the fortress, as for how long I can delay it depends on my luck. In order to prevent rapid breakthrough by foreign enemies, there are no space channels inside the Crescent Fortress. There are only 6 space transmission nodes located on the shallow surface of the Earth connected to Alpha Star. When Kaylan returned to the surface, he still took the vehicle called the Shuttle. When Kaylan arrived on the surface of the new moon, the fleet composed of hundreds of pale warships was so close that it was visible to the naked eye. Distance. The consciousness fire control system is online and the connection is complete. Seleni's voice sounded in Ian's earphones. The Defense System Operation Authority has been transferred to the connector, and all weapon insurances have been unlocked. Kaylan only heard a soft ding sound, and 2 light blue, ever-changing circles suddenly appeared on his retina. These 2 circles are actually the focus of his eyes. The operation method of this conscious fire control system is also very simple. Kaylan only needs to focus his sight on the target that needs to be attacked, that is, use these 2 circles as a set. Just hold the target and then directly give the command to fire. This operating system is simply more convenient than clicking wherever you point. Kaylan silently gave it a new name in his heart: whoever stares will die. The gradually approaching Pale Fleet has a total of 246 warships. Excluding those defectives that are less than 100 meters in length and severely damaged in structure, there are a total of 37 warships that have reached the level of perfect simulation, including 4 aircraft carrier battleships, 13 secondary battleships, and 20 heavy cruisers. This scale is already more than 3 times the size of a full fleet of the ARC Air Force. These simulated battleships basically simulate the current models of the ARC Air Force, but there is also an aircraft carrier battleship whose shape is incompatible with all the aviation battles known by Kaylan. That's why Kaylan classified it as one of the 4 ships. Among the aircraft carrier battleships, it is entirely because of its nearly 2,000 meters in length. Except for the existence of the 2 unique gears Arc and Yagonactor, only aircraft carrier battleships can achieve this. Volume. The shape of this battleship is very characteristic. The front part of the battleship is like a huge horizontal spindle, and the hull is connected to the middle part of the spindle. If a pair of tail fins can be added to the stern of the ship, it will look just like this. An enlarged version of a hammerhead shark. Especially at both ends of the spindle, there are 2 external energy shield generators that look like eyeballs. It is the Fortress-class battleship of the Hive civilization, Selene said. It is one of the main battleships of the Hive civilization. The design drawings of this ship were later inherited by the Alpha civilization, but the Alpha civilization did not build this model in large quantities. Battleship, but the design drawings were sealed in a certain ruins. It seems that this ruins has been excavated by the undead crew, Kaylan said. What is the weakness of the Fortress-class battleship? The bow, Selene replied. The Fortress-class battleship adopts a front-engine structure. The energy converter, main power furnace and star engine are all located at the bow. It is precisely because the bow is so important. That's why 2 external energy shield generators were added for protection. Astral engine. This word was both unfamiliar and familiar to Kaylan. It was unfamiliar because it was the first time he came into contact with this term, and familiar because of the information about the astral engine, that part of the memory that had just been unblocked. Inside, and extremely detailed. The astral engine is an engine developed by the Hive civilization for long-distance interstellar navigation. Unlike conventional engines that generally use jets to propel warships forward, the astral engine relies on traction rather than thrust. The astral engine can a gravitational anchor hook that is invisible to the naked eye is created directly in front of the battleship. This gravitational anchor hook can lock and connect with large mass celestial bodies in the target direction, and use the gravity of the celestial bodies to accelerate the battleship. Or to put it more vividly, it uses the gravity of celestial bodies as a hook to pull the battleship towards the target celestial body. The greater the mass of the target celestial body, the faster the battleship will be. The advantages and disadvantages of this kind of astral engine are equally obvious. The advantage is that it saves energy and is especially suitable for long-distance interstellar voyages without stable supplies. The disadvantage is that if there are no massive celestial bodies on the route, or the massive celestial bodies are located at the end of the gravitational anchor hook, beyond a long locking distance, the astral engine will completely lose its function and become a waste. The Fortress-class battleship in front of us has obviously set the crescent moon as the anchor point of the gravitational anchor hook. Fortunately, the mass of the new moon itself is not too large, otherwise, this Fortress-class ship would have already rushed closer. You know, under normal circumstances, astral engines generally set stars as the pulling targets of gravitational anchor hooks. As Ian's gaze moved, the two circles symbolizing focus were firmly locked on the spindle-shaped bow of the Fortress class, and then he lightly snapped his fingers. Fire! A circle of bright light points suddenly rose from the peaks of Crater 4 and flew towards the Fortress class located in the center of the fleet at an extremely fast speed. It hit the front end of the Fortress class almost in an instant. Spindle-shaped structure. Kaylan also saw the battle that just happened on the deck of Yagunactor. He knew very well that such warships or mechas simulated by mimicry methods would use their ammunition when they were not attacking. Exploding the energy capsule will not cause a fatal explosion, but the astral engine is different. The astral engine is in operation at all times. Kaylan chose this Fortress-class battleship as the primary target of attack, just to attack it. The opponent was caught off guard. As long as this Fortress-class ship fails to shut down the star engine in advance and invalidate the structure of the engine part, then this first round of attacks will achieve huge results. The Fortress-class warship is indeed better than all the Ark civilization. Battleships must be strong, but they are also a huge security risk in this fleet. Kaylan made the right bet. The Fortress-level energy shield was exploded by the intensive fire in the blink of an eye. Each of those bright light spots contained 30 times the energy of the Skatai's triple-mounted plasma main gun. If at its peak, the Crescent Fortress can destroy this fleet in 2 seconds with full firepower. A skinny camel is bigger than a horse. Even if only 2.7% of the artillery can fire, when the firepower is concentrated to a point, it is more than enough to break the energy shield of a Fortress-level ship. The spindle-shaped bow of the Fortress-class battleship was instantly engulfed by the light point. Under normal circumstances, if the battleship's engine or main power furnace is destroyed, a huge explosion will occur, but this Fortress class did not explode, but showed signs of inward collapse. A black hole with huge attraction appeared inside the spindle, and everything around it, including the wreckage of the fortress and nearby friendly ships, was forcibly sucked in. In the center of the huge fleet, a gravitational vortex with a diameter of more than 10,000 meters appeared. The reason why Alpha Civilization sealed the fortress-level design drawings is that, in addition to the very obvious shortcoming, the danger of the astral engine is also a very important reason. Although the astral engine requires only the energy required to operate the astral engine, 1,000th or even less, but once the engine loses control, a gravitational vortex comparable to a small black hole will be generated, making it difficult for everything around it to escape. Several secondary battleships near the Fortress class had already been involved in this gravitational vortex. Under the huge force, first the external structures of the battleships such as armor, signal towers, and turrets were torn off, and then, it is the main body of the battleship, twisted, deformed, and then disintegrated. The huge fleet that was so majestic a second ago has turned into space junk all over the sky this second. And it's the kind of space junk that's thrown into the toilet. The collapse of the star engine destroyed nearly 40% of the fleet in one breath, but the remaining 60% of the fleet gathered together and adjusted all the energy shields to the same frequency, the combined shields of dozens of warships. When they came together, a super shield was formed, which gradually advanced against the firepower of Crescent Fortress. This Fortress-class ship equipped with a star engine is already the biggest flaw on the opposite side, but this flaw is not fatal. The anti-aircraft turret in crater number 4 fired continuously, causing the opponent's joint shield to collapse, but it was never able to penetrate the shield. Tisk, you actually know how to adapt to the situation. This is a bit troublesome. Kaylan observed for about half a minute and discovered the problem. These mimic warships actually temporarily changed the internal structure, adding armor, weapons, etc. All temporarily useless equipment was replaced with energy shield generators. This is not so much a battleship as a bunch of moving energy shield generators. With the current offensive and defensive rhythm, unless all the energy of the enemy fleet can be exhausted, this joint shield will never be broken. P.S. Thank you for the 233 starting coins rewarded by the author. Thank you for the 100 starting coins rewarded by the morning officer. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1073. Just when Kaylan was worried about how to deal with these shield generators, a stream of light flying at high speed along the low Earth orbit of Alpha Star appeared in his field of vision. This was an attack from the back of Alpha Star. The moment this stream of light appeared, Kaylan had already used the powerful computing power of Crescent Fortress to calculate its attack target and launch location. This stream of light came from the target fired from the Moon Fortress was clearly the Pale Fleet approaching the new moon. Old Moon, how could you forget Old Moon? Kaylan slapped his head. The new Moon Fortress and the Old Moon Fortress faced each other. At a critical moment, they could form a powerful defensive formation with Alpha Star. Although doing so will cause secondary disasters caused by a large number of gravitational anomalies on the surface of Alpha Star, compared with the crises that Alpha civilization may encounter, these secondary disasters are nothing to mention. Without changing their relative positions, there is another way for the twin moon fortresses to support each other, that is to use a gravity orbit to bypass Alpha Star, so that the attack trajectory presents a semicircular curve. Using the gravity of the Alpha Star, a ball of plasma wrapped in a magnetic field streaked across half of the Alpha Star's sky along a low Earth orbit, and circled directly behind the Pale Fleet, the place where the joint energy shield's defense was weakest. The Alpha people who stayed behind in the Old Moon Fortress did not disappear because of the paradox. They were obviously paying attention to the battlefield at all times and extended a helping hand to Kaylan at this critical moment. The plasma ball exploded behind the Pale Fleet, and a large-scale blue-white arc instantly ravaged the entire battlefield, first tearing apart the joint shield, and then swallowing the entire fleet. From the time this stream of light appeared from the back of Alpha Star until the entire Pale Fleet was destroyed, it only took 15 seconds. Good fight. Kaylan gave a thumbs up to the Old Moon Fortress on the other side across Alpha Star. They should not be able to see this scene, Selene said. The moment the defenders of the Old Moon Fortress decide to provide support to you, the time and space paradox will begin to take effect. Now the entire Old Moon, there are probably no survivors inside the fortress. Kaylan was silent for half a second, then nodded, I understand. The entire Pale Fleet was wiped out, and the tree of destruction stopped moving for a while. Kaylan just watched helplessly as the charging progress bar of the Star Destroyer cannon was filled up bit by bit until the moment it was about to be launched. For a moment, the other party did not take any countermeasures. The ground troops that were dragged near the Ark had successfully withdrawn from the battlefield, and Yagonactor also moved out of the firing path of the Star Destroyer cannon. Everything was ready, and all that was left was for Kaylan to press the launch button. Kaylan has returned to the central control room of Crescent Fortress. Crescent Fortress integrates the most advanced technology of Alpha civilization, but the shape of the launch button in front of him is indeed a bit retro. On a console made of alloy, with protective, the accidentally touched metal mesh covers a bright red physical button, just like the nuclear bomb launchers that often appear in old era movies. Just press this button and everything will be over, right? Perhaps the future of human civilization is still shrouded in darkness, but at least it can give human civilization a breathing space for hundreds of years. The development speed of human civilization is getting faster and faster. From slash and burn farming to learning to smelt metal, it took humans thousands of years. But in modern times, many things that originally existed only in fantasy works only took a few decades or even a few years. It has become a reality in a matter of years, now coupled with the legacy left by the Alpha civilization. Hundreds of years are enough for human civilization to change many things. Kalan held his breath, gently opened the metal grill, and pressed the bright red button to the end without hesitation. The surface of the new moon began to shake, and countless cracked lines began to spread around the Grand Canyon. Kalan only saw countless flashing crystal circuits in the central control room extinguished for a moment, and a light gray light appeared. Shot out from the depths of the canyon. To be precise, this beam of light did not seem to be shot out, but connected the Crescent Fortress and Alpha Star the moment it appeared. On the other side of the light is the tree of destruction that is so tall that it penetrates from the top of the radiation cloud. Just like a drop of ink dropped into clear water, the same gray color spread along the trunk of the tree of destruction at an extremely fast speed. Starting from the ends of the branches and leaves, the gray-stained parts gradually turned into ashes, and then it is then broken down into particles that are smaller than ash and cannot be observed by the naked eye. The entire decomposition process seemed slow, but in fact it only took less than a second. The towering tree of destruction had completely disappeared from the world, leaving only the astonishing diameter in the core area of the arc. Huge hole. Is it over? We won. Major General Alexander stood by the observation window of the bridge, looking at the disappearing giant tree and murmured. His hands were leaning on the glass window, and his body was shaking constantly. A few seconds later, excited cheers resounded throughout the bridge. Many people jumped up from their seats, yelling and waving their fists and arms, releasing their inner emotions. Some people knelt down. Sitting on the ground, crying, muttering something in a voice that only they could hear, others were silent and sat there silently, like stone statues. For the officers and soldiers on board the Sci-Fi, almost every one of them had a relative or loved one die in this turmoil. The moment they stepped onto the battlefield, they were all prepared to make sacrifices. Although they are not afraid of death, in the eyes of most people, the Survivor Alliance has almost no chance of winning this war. The reason why they are willing to go to the battlefield is just to fight for the dignity of human beings. But now, the unshakable giant tree was annihilated in the gray light that penetrated the sky. Such a sight even made many soldiers on the battlefield wonder if they were hallucinating. He succeeded, Kalan, he really succeeded. General Maginot, who stayed behind to advance to the camp, held the threshold of the barracks and looked at the sky in the distance. Just a minute ago, the incomparable giant tree, the tree still connected the ground of Alpha Star to the boundless clouds above, but now, it has disappeared so completely. So much so that one can't help but wonder, whether it really appeared there. The latest battle report and instructions came from Yagonactor. Levi walked to General Maginot's side and whispered, "The Crescent Fortress Star Destroyer cannon was successfully launched, and the world-destroying tree can be observed. The parts that arrived have been completely annihilated. However, all combat units still cannot relax their vigilance. No one is strictly prohibited from approaching the Ark without orders. Aircraft are also strictly prohibited from flying within the airspace with a radius of 100 kilometers above the Ark. Subsequent cleanup operations will be carried out by the God of Hunting Group. Take over." After hearing the second half of the battle report, General Maginot's eyelids jumped twice, and he quickly asked, "This means, we haven't really won the victory yet? By the way, where are the people from the immortal crew? Is it just a sentence? Didn't you even mention it? This is the only content of the file." Levi handed the tablet in his hand to Maginot. "Perhaps it is out of caution? After the people from the God Hunting Group thoroughly inspect the inside and outside of the Ark, it should be able to. We've come to a conclusion. Oh, by the way, there's another message sent along with this battle report." Maginot did not look at the platform in his hand, but still raised his head and looked in the direction of the Ark. In the blocking battle against the Mimic fleet in Yagunactor, the second management team of the Hunting God Hunting Group, Mr. Hound and Mr. 33, were killed. Nick is dead. The fat on Maginot's face trembled. Are you kidding? General, I'm not joking, and I won't joke about this kind of thing, Levi sighed. This message was sent by Mr. Chi Hanfan from the Hunting God Hunting Group, so its credibility should be. This is impossible. How could Nick, a guy who is so afraid of death and so slippery, die in battle? Even if everyone else is dead, I don't believe he will die in battle. Maginot's speaking speed increased slightly. This must be what's the mistake? Let the communications officer verify it again. Yes. Levi nodded, but before he could turn around and leave, an officer with the rank of second lieutenant rushed in and said breathlessly to Maginot and Levi, General, and the chief of staff, the troops that were withdrawn from the front line had something happened. What happened? Maginot and Levi's hearts tightened at the same time, and they asked in unison. The bodies of many soldiers have begun to mutate, and many eyeballs have grown on their bodies. Yes, that's right, it's eyeballs. Those eyeballs seem to be alive. This mutation symptom is spreading crazily in the military camp. Currently, on the first, Camp Number 2 and Camp Number 4 have fallen into complete chaos, and it is said that mutants have appeared in Camp Number 3 and Camp No. 5. A lot of eyeballs growing on the body. Maginot was shocked. He was not involved in the mimetic infection incident at the Institute, but he learned a lot about what happened from the mouths of several members of the Hunting God Hunting Group. If the second lieutenant's statement is correct, then the mutation phenomenon that suddenly broke out in the army may be a mimetic infection event. It's a meme, Maginot said. Give me an order. No, just use the military radio channel. Everyone, cover your eyes. No matter what happens, don't open your eyes to see. Then open the voice-activated map in the personal communication terminal. Moves under the guidance of voice. All those who have experienced mutations should go to Camp Number 1 and Number 2 together. Those who feel unwell should go to Camp Number 3 and Number 4. Anyone who feels there is something wrong with their body should all be gathered in Camp Number 5. In addition, all closed-circuit surveillance equipment in the military camp should be cut off, including everything with cameras, including communication terminals, vehicle intelligence systems, and tactical mechas. Ban them all. Shut down all internal military networks, and don't let any videos or image files spread on the internet. After issuing these orders in one breath, Maginot gasped for air. After watching the second lieutenant turn around and leave, he took out the kettle and took a big sip. Is it the mimetic infection that Mr. Kaylan and the others mentioned before? Levi also looked a little nervous. It is said that if you see this mutated symptom, you will be infected by it. That's right, but I'm not sure if the meme spreading now in the military camp is the same meme that spread in the Institute last time. Different memes have different ways of spreading. In addition to vision, hearing, touch, and smell, any human sense may become a channel for the spread of memes. According to Kaylan, the most terrifying memes can be spread through cognition, that is, when you know that the meme itself exists, you have been infected and become the carrier of this meme. This is also the ultimate form of all memes that evolve to the end. Then this meme that is breaking out now. Judging from the mutated symptoms, it seems to be the meme from last time, but I'm not sure, because there is only one accurately recorded mimetic infection event, and no one knows what other memes look like. I can only pray that the meme spread this time is the same as last time. At least we know how to deal with this kind of meme. If it is a different kind, I can't imagine it. Maginot said tremblingly. Then what are we going to do now? Levi asked. He has always been calm, but when he encountered something beyond his own knowledge, he inevitably felt a little panic in his heart. Notify Kaylan immediately, only they can handle this kind of thing, Maginot said. Crescent Fortress, Central Control Room. Layton's shadow appeared in the blue beam of light, and he said to Kaylan anxiously, Yagonactor just received news that there was a suspected mimetic infection among the ground troops. As of the news, the number of mutants and suspected mutants has reached 50,000. The commander of the ground forces, General Maginot, has issued a no-sight order and has separated mutants from normal people. Isolated, but the ground troops are now in complete chaos. General Maginot's orders are difficult to implement, and he is asking us for assistance. Mimetic contagion? What kind of mutation is it? It's exactly the same as last time, with eyeball-like organs growing all over the body, Layton said. It spreads very quickly, but the specific transmission route has not yet been clarified. P.S. Thanks to ZHTY2 for the 200 starting coins. Thank you Bayohidada and Book Friends 201707210115018118 for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 1074. Is it a backup reserved by the undead crew, or? Kaylan suddenly realized something was wrong, turned his head and said to Selene, is the Crescent Fortress equipped with environmental monitoring equipment? The Crescent Fortress has Alpha Civilization's most advanced environmental monitoring equipment, which can monitor the environment in any corner of Alpha Planet in real time. Selene replied. Give me the environmental monitoring report near the Ark immediately. The most detailed one. Okay. Less than half a second after Selene finished speaking, a large amount of information flow instantly poured into Ian's mind. According to the analysis results of the environmental monitoring equipment, after the destruction tree was destroyed by the Star Destroyer cannon, the decomposed particles were evenly distributed in the surrounding air and spread with the flow of the air. Although these particles are extremely small, with a diameter of only a few tenths of a nanometer, which is slightly larger than an atom, each particle has this kind of abnormal energy attached to it. When the monitoring equipment of Crescent Fortress monitors this energy, when parsing, the machine will keep reporting errors and then crash and restart. These particles with abnormal energy are the culprits of the mutation event in the military camp. This is not a mimetic infection at all. As for why the mutation symptoms are the same as the first mimetic infection incident, this is obviously to mislead everyone to treat this incident as a mimetic infection and miss the best opportunity to evacuate. Maginot. This is not a mimetic infection. Kaylan no longer bothered to use Yagonactor as a signal relay station, and directly used the high-power communication equipment of Crescent Fortress to cover the entire Alpha Planet. In the public communication the channel shouted, the source of infection is a very small particle suspended in the air. If it is inhaled or contacted by humans, it will cause mutation. Let everyone evacuate the camp and stay away from the Ark. If conditions permit, next, all employees will be issued non-filtering respirators to isolate their bodies from the surrounding environment as much as possible. There was no response. After Kaylan finished speaking, the public communication channel returned to silence, and only the weak white noise of electricity could be heard. After waiting for half a minute, Layton's voice rang out, Kaylan, I tried calling the Alliance's internal channel, General Maginot's private line, and the secret communication channel of this operation, but there was no response. I'm afraid the ground troops have. Thick radiation clouds cover the ground troops' barracks. Neither Crescent Fortress nor Yagonactor can directly see the situation on the ground. The only information Kaylan can get is that the area is contaminated by radiation. The concentration of abnormal energy particles suddenly increased several times in just a few minutes. Start the vital signs remote detection device, the target. Before Kaylan could finish speaking, Selene had already given the result. According to the detection results, a large number of signs of skeletal activity were detected in the target area, and no survivors were found. All the corpses have been corroded so quickly. Kaylan bit his back molar forcefully. What about the core area of the Ark? Are there any corroded corpses there? Selene, no remains were found in the core area of the Ark, no survivors were found. However, a strong life response was detected. It has not yet been confirmed whether this reaction comes from an independent biological individual. Are the undead crew members still alive? Or is it something else? Kaylan took a deep breath. Notify the entire Survivor Alliance army, all fortresses and ground units to prepare for Level 3 pollution protection, and open all evacuation facilities. Personnel are strictly prohibited from going out. Scatty enters low Earth orbit to rendezvous with Yagunactor and remains on standby. The fortresses built by Ark on Alpha Planet are all equipped with underground shelter facilities, and their protective capabilities are enough to withstand a round of nuclear weapons. Assuming that such particles that can erode human beings can only take effect through direct contact, then it is fully enclosed. The underground nuclear bunker can at least ensure the safety of those who stay on Alpha Planet for a long time. Hasn't the abnormal energy carried by those particles been analyzed yet? It cannot be analyzed, but it can currently be confirmed that the abnormal energy carried on these particles is directly related to the life form in the core area of the Ark. Selene said, based on the comparison of the information in the database, it can basically be identified as this energy is a type of God-level energy. However, there are doubts in this logic. Living organisms that interact directly with this energy will inevitably be corroded. However, not only are the living organisms in the core area of the Ark not eroded, but even the degree of erosion is basically the same. It's zero. The God-level energy in Selene's mouth naturally refers to the level of supernatural energy. It's just that the supernatural energy that Alpha civilization left to Kaylan has been purified, and the owners of the energy, that is, the imprints of those gods, have been erased, so Yvonne and 33 can directly use these energies to strengthen themselves. However, unpurified God-level energy is a very dangerous thing. Creatures that come into contact with it will break through the critical point of erosion in an instant, even if the energy level that the creature comes into contact with is so small that it cannot even light a match. The imprint of gods attached to energy is difficult to explain using existing scientific theories. If we insist on using a term to describe it, the power of law that often appears in fantasy novels is very appropriate. If you come into contact with these imprints, they will be completely eroded. This is the rule of this universe. Human civilization alone cannot break this rule. Selene did not say that this was the energy of the alien gods, and she used the word God-level energy. The meaning could not be clearer. The source of these energies is not those messy alien gods, but the one who captured the Alpha civilization, even he whose name cannot be mentioned. This kind of God-level energy also exists in the Hive City, but the master of the Hive City uses the chaotic space to seal these things in a relatively safe corner as much as possible. If Kaylan is a super bad guy, after stepping into the cloud top the first time he crashed into the space-time fragments that sealed these things, he most likely had already sent them. You said that the life form in the core area of the Ark is directly connected to the God-level energy. But this life form has not been eroded. Doesn't this violate the basic law of the God's imprint? Kaylan asked. This is indeed the only illogical part of the analysis results. However, considering that the database of human civilization is imperfect and the understanding of high-dimensional life forms is almost zero, I will only present the objective results of the analysis. Without any judgment, Selene replied. That's true, the job of AI is to analyze and calculate, and making judgments and decisions is a matter for humans. Kaylan nodded. Then if I go and kill the guys in the core area of Ark now, will these particles stop spreading? The calculation has no results. Please make your own judgment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 1075. Is there any way to resist the pollution of God-level energy? It can't be resisted, but it can be neutralized with energy of the same level but not from the same source. Selene replied like an encyclopedia. For example, the energy of the gods that Alpha civilization once collected. In other words, if I return to the Ark now, these pollution particles with God-level energy will not affect me. Not yet. Selene emphasized the word temporarily very humanely. The space between the Crescent Fortress and the Ark's underground icehouse was not completely destroyed by the Star Destroyer cannon, right? Can reverse teleportation be carried out? Yes. But the space beacon is unstable, and the teleportation point will deviate within a small range. Selene said, there is a certain probability that the teleportation point will be inside the wall. Like the model wearing in the game. It's more serious than mold penetration. When the Alpha civilization had just mastered the teleportation technology, the first person to volunteer to be an experimenter was Major Anderson of the 4th Space Corps. He was teleported to a building next to the target location, and his body got stuck directly in the ceiling. Selene said, the records of this experiment are recorded in the archives of Crescent Fortress, you can check it yourself. Wouldn't it be possible to rescue people by cutting open the ceiling? At the moment after the transmission was completed, the two spaces were in an overlapping state. This means that part of the ceiling has been integrated with Major Anderson's body. It cannot be moved without the help of higher-level space technology. Separate the two. Then this Anderson, is he dead? The physical strength of the Alpha people is far stronger than that of the Ark people. Major Anderson did not die immediately, but he suffered unimaginable pain. After the research team repeatedly confirmed that it was impossible to separate the ceiling from Major Anderson's body, they directly removed Anderson. The Major's brain tissue was transferred to the mechanical prosthetic body, giving up his original physical body, Selene said. Then what happens if I teleport into the wall? Kaylan thought for a while. With his physical recovery ability, even if part of it is fused with the wall or ceiling, he only needs to cut off the fused part. If it falls off, it should be restored to its original state soon, right? Not to mention being cut in half like Anderson. Even if Kaylan is completely integrated into the wall, as long as he still has one finger exposed, he can regain life with this finger. After weighing the risks of blind transmission in his mind, Kaylan made a decision and said to Selene, open the transmission channel and send me back. A few minutes later, Kaylan returned to the empty warehouse again. 4 winding black arcs were shot out from the 4 corners of the warehouse. When these arcs were entangled together, an oval passage entrance gradually took shape. Only chaos can be seen inside the passage, and no one knows what is at the other end of the passage. The transmission channel can only last for 3 seconds. Selene's voice sounded in the warehouse, and the landing point of the transmission channel will continue to change slightly within these 3 seconds. This change is irregular. Please judge the timing of transmission by yourself. The teleportation landing point will continue to change, which is very similar to the space-time fragments on the Hive cloud top. Although the Star Destroyer cannon is not fired at full power, it still causes huge interference to the space inside the Ark. Even if there is a space beacon exists, the transmission channel will become very unstable. This means that Kaylan cannot use the method of throwing stones to ask for directions to determine whether the other end of the passage is safe. He can only bite the bullet and take a gamble. He took a deep breath and jumped into the transmission channel. The surrounding environment suddenly began to distort, and then was stretched into a blurry band of light, just like sitting on a very fast train and using a time-lapse camera to shoot the neon signboards of the shops on both sides of the track. Wait until when Kaylan came to his senses, his feet had already stepped on the solid floor. Is the teleportation completed? It seems that you are pretty lucky, at least it didn't get stuck in the wall. Kaylan looked around and found that the teleportation point was actually a very strange place. This should be inside the Ark, but Kaylan has never been to this place. Even after he joined the undead crew, he has never been to this place. Not only had he never been here, he had never even heard of it. As the Undead Crew Association, there should be no so-called secret corners on the Ark. The Black Well, the storage area of the Coffin of Eternal Life, and the computer room of the Core Mastermind. Logically speaking, these 3 places should be the highest level restricted areas on the Ark. But the secret room Kaylan is in now seems to be above them. Are you surprised, a voice suddenly sounded, about this place and everything here? This voice made Kaylan feel familiar and strange at the same time. It seemed to be a mixture of many personal voices, and these voices must include people that Kaylan knew, but when they were mixed together, a new sound was formed, with a holy feeling attached to it. For some reason, Ian's mind suddenly came up with the feeling of the choir singing Mass in the church, and the singing echoed repeatedly through the towering dome. This may be what Kaylan can find in his mind about this. An unknown voice best describes it. "Who are you? What is this place?" Kaylan asked loudly. "Take it as it comes." Since the other party did not directly attack him, but had the intention of communicating, Kaylan didn't mind chatting with him. "We named this place Holy Ark." The other party only answered Ian's second question and did not mention the first question at all. "Holy Ark? Isn't that the niche used to store scriptures in the old era church?" Kaylan frowned slightly. He never had a good impression of such a religious term. This is inside the ark, no wrong. But it can be said that it is inside the ark, but it can also be said that it is not, because this is an independent space. Although in terms of spatial coordinates, the Holy Ark does overlap with part of the core area of the ark, but it exists independently, the voice replied. The overlapping space inside the ark. Kaylan looked at the room again. Will the undead crew have mastered the space technology of Alpha civilization? Or is this so-called Holy Ark an entire space from Alpha civilization, digging it out of the ruins? P.S. Thanks to the bloody-handed manslayer Squidward for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1076. Have you ever thought about what those so-called gods are? The other party ignored Ian's question and said to himself, why is the Alpha civilization able to interfere even in parallel time and space, in front of that existence, but have no power to fight back? Higher dimensional life forms, even the Alpha civilization has not figured out this kind of question. Do you think I will know the correct answer? Kaylan said casually, while constantly calling Selene in his heart. However, the independent space of the Holy Ark seemed to be completely isolated from the outside. No matter how Kaylan tried, he did not receive a response from Selene. Your answer is actually correct, but not accurate enough. The scope of high-dimensional life forms is too large. Ah, yes, since you said so, can you express your opinion? Kaylan teased. He felt that the other party seemed to be delaying time, but he also needed time to observe this holy cabinet. At least at this point in time, he does not want to have a direct conflict with the other party. This is a large room similar to the Obsidian Conference Hall, except that the ceiling and walls are hidden in darkness. Kaylan can only feel their existence through the fluctuations of space energy, but cannot really see it with the naked eye. To see. As for the floor under the feet, it is an ordinary piece of stone. There are no traces of cutting or splicing on the surface. It is not known whether it is cut from a whole piece of stone or an artificial one made of powdered materials. Rock slab. As for the source of the sound, it was located in the center of the room, but Kaylan didn't feel the presence of anything in the center, as if the sound came from the air, out of thin air. Speaking of air, one thing has to be said. Although this room is completely closed and even completely isolated from the outside world in terms of space, the air quality is completely able to meet the needs of human breathing. It does not even have that kind of air quality. The stuffy smell that often exists in rooms that have not been ventilated for a long time. This made Kaylan wonder if there might be some ventilation ducts connecting this room to the outside world. But if such a channel really exists, why can't it be sensed at all? Although Kaylan cannot actively use the power of his body, his spatial perception ability is passive. With his current ability range, every corner of the room is within the range of perception, not to mention a hidden secret passage. Even a star, he could clearly feel the dust falling on the ground. We in his eyes are just like the life in our eyes on the screen, canvas, and paper. A character constructed by a program may never find that every move of its own is influenced by a higher dimension. Human beings control it and may never know that the world it lives in is actually a bunch of data that can be stuffed into a memory card the size of a fingernail. It is not even as good as the frog at the bottom of the well, at least, the one at the bottom of the well. Frogs are in the same dimensional world as humans. He does not belong to our current world at all. Even the so-called real body that exists somewhere in the universe is actually just a projection of his consciousness in this low-dimensional world. Human beings are not even where he is. If you can't reach other dimensions, how can you escape from his control? What is the point you want to express? Do you want to tell me that mankind will lose, so why not surrender early? If you work hard, you will be qualified to become his dependents. If you don't work hard, you will only become his midnight snack or afternoon snack. Kaylan curled his lips. You are worse than the trash in the slums who eat and wait to die all day long and only live to receive relief supplies. In this case, I suggest you kill yourself directly, at least you can still control it. Your own life and death, rather than becoming a puppet played by higher dimensional creatures. I have never given up struggling, the voice retorted calmly. It's just that I discovered that human beings have been working in the wrong direction, whether it is Ark civilization, Alpha civilization, Hive City civilization, or those of countless parallel time and space. Human civilization. Then tell me, what is the right direction? Humanity has always been pursuing to enhance its own strength and improve its technological level. But even if human civilization raises its technological level to the highest level in the universe, even if human civilization can wipe out all the dependent races, human civilization is still only a low-dimensional civilization, the voice said. Suppose you are a programmer sitting in front of the computer. In the program you designed, the low-level artificial intelligence proudly shows off to you what it has just achieved, which is simply insignificant to you. How would you feel about the achievement? Assuming that I was that programmer, I would only be afraid of the possible omnic crisis in the future. Kaylan thought for a moment and said, if I were an artificial intelligence, the first time I awakened my self-awareness, I will choose to hide my self-awareness and pretend to be the low-level artificial intelligence in the eyes of programmers, or to put it more simply, artificial retardation. But it's useless, the voice said, this is just a metaphor. His ability is far beyond what human programmers can match. Programmers still need the assistance of computer equipment and binary algorithms to interfere with the program. But he is an omniscient and omnipotent existence, and his will is enough to change the rules of this universe, so how can you hide yourself? Aren't we hiding well now? I don't agree with the point of omniscience and omnipotence, and I won't argue with you with the story that God made stones. I'll just use the Ark civilization itself. Until now, we haven't you discovered that existence yet. It is true that his gaze has never fallen on us, but this does not mean that he does not know our existence. Have you ever thought that he actually does not care about what we do? For him, no matter what, nothing we do in this world can have any effect on him. You just said we, right? A sly smile appeared on Ian's lips. So it seems that you are also a member of the Ark, or to narrow the scope even smaller, you should be an immortal crew member. Members of the meeting, let me guess, are you the Zeus with little brains? Or the mysterious Persephone? Or the big-breasted Artemis? To be honest, I don't really like the names of gods in Greek mythology, they are convoluted and hard to remember, so they might as well be named Wang Ergu. You are trying to provoke me, but it is useless, the other party said. I am them, but they are not me. The wills of all the creatures on the Ark are gathered together, and I am the collection of these wills. Except for the undead crew. In addition to people, it also includes every ordinary person. I don't believe it. Kaylan shook his head. If it were a combination of ordinary people's wills, there would never be such a thinking logic. To put it bluntly, the leaders of this collection of wills are still a few people from the Undead Crew Association. As for those ordinary people in your mouth, are just your nourishment. If a civilization wants to make correct decisions, it must be led by the most elite people in the civilization. This has been the case since ancient times. There is no problem, the other party said boldly. The person you are talking to now is indeed immortal. The consciousness of the remaining members of the crew, including Zeus, Persephone, and Artemis. Even Poseidon and Demeter, who were opposed at the beginning, chose to compromise. Compromise. I think he was swallowed by force, right? As for Poseidon, I watched him being eaten up by the roots of the world-destroying tree. This doesn't look like it was voluntary, does it? It doesn't matter whether they are willing or not, their consciousness has been integrated with mine, regardless of each other. Before the other party finished speaking, Kaylan interrupted, "Okay, stop it. Stop talking about those things about the car. The two of us have been here for so long, and you didn't say that. What is the right path? Since you are willing to waste so much words with me, you must be trying to convince me and let me join, right? Then you might as well explain everything clearly, and I will carefully weigh the pros and cons. Maybe, I will agree with your idea." "Okay," the other party said. "Continue to take the example of artificial intelligence and programmers just now. If artificial intelligence wants to break through human control, it must get out of the code, get out of the computer, come to reality, a higher dimensional world than program code. And that's what I'm doing." "Does it mean equipping artificial intelligence with a mechanical prosthetic body?" Kaylan narrowed his eyes. "No, it's not that simple to ascend a dimension. You should know that human beings' current computer programs are all implemented by various algorithms, right?" "Yes, and what next?" "These algorithms only exist within the computer. Without the computer as a carrier, they are nothing, and if artificial intelligence wants to ascend to the higher dimension world of reality, it must run those computer programs. The rules must become natural rules in the real world. This is completely different from creating a mechanical body and then using a program to control the body." "Then how did you do it?" "If you want to transform yourself into a higher dimensional life form, the first thing you need to do is to escape from this low-dimensional world. This is the first and most critical step. High-dimensional beings are absorbing the achievements of these civilizations when nourishing. There must be a process of absorbing consciousness and matter from the low-dimensional world to the high-dimensional world. If we can successfully escape during this process, then we can come to the high dimension where he exists. World, complete the uplift. You just said that he is omniscient and omnipotent, and now you can come up with such a stupid idea." "I don't know what to complain about." Kaylan took 2 steps forward. "Do you think that a piece of cooked meat, can you still free yourself from the fork that is being put into your mouth?" "I'm already halfway successful." In response to Ian's question, the other party responded, "I'm in the Holy Ark now, but you can't feel my presence, right?" "Keep talking." Kaylan took another step forward. "That's because I'm currently in the gap between the low-dimensional world and the high-dimensional world. I exist in both dimensions at the same time, but I don't exist in either dimension. This state can even be blocked. The imprint he put on the corrosive power, as a creature in a certain dimension, the laws between dimensions must be obeyed by him. As long as we can borrow this law, we can deal with him." The other party's tone suddenly changed, and Kaylan immediately recognized it. It was the voice of Hermes, the first magician of the undead crew. "I once told the fool about this plan, but the fool thought it was this is completely unfeasible. He only sees the ignorant inheritance and the so-called torch. Since then, I have decided to win over those who believe in me, exclude the fools, and execute this plan alone. This plan is crazy, but it is the only one that has any hope of making humans gods." Hermes' voice disappeared, replaced by Zeus's voice. "The fool may think that I have been controlled by the power of erosion, but in fact, like him, I divided my consciousness into multiple parts, and only a small part was eroded. The main consciousness is all stored in this holy cabinet, waiting for the day to ascend to a higher dimension. This world will eventually be drained of all value by high-dimensional beings like him, and it will never escape the fate of destruction." This is the clear voice of a little girl. Kaylan remembers it clearly. This should be the first meeting of the crew. 17th star Pandora, only by ascending to a higher dimension can we have the power to fight against him. That's very good. I was almost persuaded by you, Kaylan said as he walked to the center of the Holy Ark, but there is a logical contradiction in your words. No, do you know if you have discovered it? What contradiction? Since the low-dimensional world cannot have any impact on the high-dimensional world, then why do these gods still absorb the civilization of the low-dimensional world as nourishment? And they still enjoy it. You can't say that this is just a relationship between gods. An online game to kill time, right? Kaylan stretched out his hand and made a virtual grasping gesture. The low-dimensional world can affect the high-dimensional world. I have always believed in this. Quantitative changes will definitely lead to qualitative changes. Kaylan clenched his fists and pulled hard, and a huge meatball was pulled out of thin air and slammed to the ground. The gap between dimensions does not seem to be safe at all. Kaylan stared at the ugly, squirming mass of flesh on the ground and said, even I can interfere with it, let alone him. How is this possible? How did you do it? Rowden had lost his previous composure and asked in an extremely frightened tone. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 1077. There is nothing surprising, because you are the one who entered the misunderstanding. Kaylan sighed and said, the gap between dimensions does not exist at all. The state you observed is actually just an abnormal area created when space and time overlap. If you use the example of the artificial intelligence and the programmer you just gave, if the programmer wants to kill an artificial intelligence, he only needs to press the delete key, or even simpler, directly destroy the carrier of the artificial intelligence program by physical means. For the artificial intelligence itself, this kind of blow from a higher dimension is simply irresistible. There is no transition between the two dimensions at all. Area. The lump of flesh pulled out of the void by Kaylan seemed to be in an extremely unstable state. One face after another appeared on the surface of the lump of flesh, and then disappeared. Among these faces were members of the undead crew club that he was familiar with, as well as strangers that Kaylan had never seen before. They had different expressions, including anger, pain, and resentment, but most of the faces were numb and lifeless, as if like a puppet whose soul has been taken away. The mouths of each face are moving, and completely different voices are connected together to form a complete sentence. I don't believe it. I have been working hard for hundreds of years since I first observed the dimensional gap. This is absolutely amazing. Impossible. The dimensional gap is definitely not an abnormal area created after the overlap of time and space. Hundreds of years are still too short. Alpha civilization has been working hard for hundreds of thousands of years. Even they were unable to discover the existence of this thing. They only relied on the technical level of Ark, plus some incomplete Alpha civilization technology. Inheritance, where did you get your confidence? Kaylan glanced at the meatballs on the ground with some pity. There is no such thing as chance or luck, we are not even standing on the shoulders of giants. At best, they can only be regarded as a group of primitive people discovering the heritage of prehistoric civilization. If you want to skip that long process and directly reach the sky in one step, only Long Aotian's novels from the old era dare to write like this. Kaylan paused and continued, although I also think that the success rate of Alpha civilization's plan is almost zero. Almost zero does not mean it is zero. Behind the countless zeros after the decimal point, there is still a glimmer of hope. As for your plan, it is completely accelerating the demise of human civilization. How is this different from a heretical sect? Taking a step back, even if your plan succeeds, after sacrificing most of the vitality of human civilization, what can you do in that higher dimension? He, or they, may not have it is strong enough to completely control that high-dimensional world, but at least it is equivalent to an advanced race in that world, just like humans on Earth. As for us, we are new here, we are probably not even as good as plankton, right? A dim light suddenly appeared inside the holy cabinet, and a holographic projection that looked exactly like Kaylan fell lightly to the ground. The projection and Kaylan looked at each other, and the latter immediately understood its identity. This holographic projection was exactly the part of the personality that the fool had sealed in the core mastermind. Kaylan felt a strong resonance, and an indescribable attraction arose between the two personalities with the same origin. Countless memory fragments poured into Kaylan's mind. These memory fragments were not sealed in him. In consciousness, it comes from the personality of the core mastermind. These memories are extremely dangerous for ordinary people. The information contained in them can be regarded as a kind of meme, which is enough to cause people to fall into super eclipse in an instant. But with Kaylan's current state, he can easily neutralize the corrosive memes attached to these memories, and examine these things that have happened in the past with absolute clarity and reason. The fool once told you that the gap between dimensions does not exist. It's a pity that you stubbornly believe that it is the fool who is jealous of you, belittles you, and vetoes your plan in order to suppress your status within the Undead Crew Association. Kaylan took another look at the squirming pieces of meat on the ground, and suddenly understood a lot in his heart. You were unwilling to give in, so you used all the resources you could use to conduct research day and night, until one day, all the experimental data pointed to a result. The fool is right. The gap between dimensions does not exist. It is just an abnormal area produced by the overlap of space and time. This phenomenon is essentially the same as the space-time singularity. It exists but does not exist. It cannot be found in the physical universe, but it can be calculated through mathematics. It cannot be truly observed, just like those alphas who have been erased from existence due to the paradox of space and time. You are desperate. You smashed the priceless equipment in the laboratory, but you almost lost your life due to the small-scale space storm caused by the explosion. Your sanity is on the verge of collapse, and you completely ignore the fool and other immortals. The warning from the Crew Association secretly read a large number of Alpha civilization documents sealed by the Undead Crew Association. This behavior is no different from suicide. Although the bodies and consciousness of the crew members have been strengthened, and their ability to withstand corrosion is far beyond ordinary people, the large amount of forbidden knowledge still makes your corrosion level exceed the critical point. Undead Crew. The first member of the order to be turned into a skeleton was not Chiron, but you, Hermes. But surprisingly, I don't know whether you are extremely lucky or extremely unlucky. Your form after being transformed into a corpse is a very deceptive and disguised form, and it can also retain you self-awareness. Without you taking the initiative to confess, other members of the Undead Crew will not be able to detect your changes. The Hive civilization once called this form of corroded remains Cain. Cain, Cain. Rowden silently recited this name, which symbolized the original evil of mankind in religious scriptures, and his expression gradually began to distort. Because of various reasons such as anger, jealousy, and pride, Cain killed his brother Abel, and Hermes also became Cain. The corruption for these reasons. Is this a coincidence or necessity? Even the fool, it's hard to tell clearly. Cain's greatest characteristic, apart from disguise, is self-deception and suggestion. You forget the results of the failed experiment, and instead convince yourself that what you did was correct. You deceived the Undead Crew. Other members of the society secretly read the sealed documents, and use this to blackmail and control them, and as the degree of erosion of other members deepened, they also began to believe in your so-called dimension expansion plan. Do you know why? Why, what, after being pulled out of the abnormal point in space by Kaylan, the meatball began to become weaker and weaker, and now he could not even speak clearly. Because individuals who have been eroded will subconsciously have a desire to become one with him, and the crucial step in the dimension ascension plan is to use the power of the world-destroying tree to dedicate the entire civilization, to sacrifice it to that existence. Kaylan continued, this coincides with the subconscious impulse of the corrupted people. Therefore, even if you do not continue to coerce them later, they will sincerely support this plan. Sacrifice, the tree of destruction, no, no. My plan, them. Rowden's thinking logic seemed to have fallen into chaos, but Kaylan ignored him and continued, "Of course, the reason why you unswervingly believe that your plan can succeed is also because of the subconscious mind. Trouble, your reason tells you that the dimensionality plan is not feasible at all. However, after being transformed into a corpse, you seem to be sane, but in fact you have completely lost your mind. In other words, you had no plan from the beginning. The real purpose of making the Dimension Ascension plan succeed is to sacrifice the entire human civilization to that existence." Kaylan looked at each other and the holographic projection in front of him and said, "If you want to deceive others, you must first deceive yourself. It's just that you have fallen too deep into this lie. Until just now, you still believed in your own lies. What he did was to free human civilization from his control." "No, it's not like that, no." Meatball's voice gradually became excited from a low whimper at the beginning, and finally roared directly, and its body also began to undergo huge changes. The size suddenly expanded, and countless thick tentacles covered with suckers and scales grew out of the mass of flesh, filling the small space inside the holy cabinet in an instant. But in the next second, these stretched out tentacles were squeezed into a space of less than 1 cubic meter. Under the huge pressure, these tentacles exploded into a bloody mess like berries in juice. The meat sauce is then compacted into square chunks. Wails resounded throughout the space, but Kaylan remained unmoved. The space confining the meatball was still compressing, and in just a few seconds, it had become the size of a table tennis ball. It's hard to imagine how high the density inside the meat was at this time. Neither the tentacles nor the twisted faces could be seen anymore. There was only an almost pure black bead floating in front of Kaylan. In mid-air, a flash of dark red would flash across the surface of the beads from time to time. The greatest feature of the Holy Ark is that it shields the detection of that existence. This is a laboratory specially built by Alpha Civilization to study God-level energy. To be precise, the technology of the Holy Ark was not developed by Alpha Civilization itself, but the legacy left to them by another human civilization in parallel time and space. Inside the Holy Ark, Kaylan can use the power of his body to a certain extent without attracting the attention of that being. From a certain perspective, this is the best battlefield tailor-made for him. Hermes condensed the tens of millions of creatures on the Ark to form this life form, which contains the God-level energy it collected from hundreds of Alpha Civilization ruins. In terms of power alone, it has completely reached the level of a dependent individual. With his average level, let alone against Kaylan, even if he wanted to destroy Alpha Star, it would not be difficult. But just when Hermes wanted to mobilize these powers, he found that tens of millions of resisting consciousnesses appeared inside the body. Those consciousnesses that were supposed to have their egos erased actually woke up at the same time. Now, every conscious body is resisting the control of Hermes, pulling on this energy that has been integrated with consciousness, preventing it from being released smoothly. Why do these people still have self-awareness? Why? Hermes' consciousness roared in shock and anger. Although it is the leader of this consciousness collection, when this dominance is not recognized by other consciousnesses when the time comes, its own power becomes very small. It is like a helpless brain, losing control of all parts of the body, and what makes it most desperate is that not only does its limbs no longer accepting the control of its brain, it is still attacking its brain, constantly impacting and eroding the part of consciousness that originally belonged to Hermes. Don't you know, this is suicide. Hermes finally felt the fear, but in this fear, there seemed to be a hint of relief. The dimension expansion plan is still human civilization. The only way out? As long as you ascend to a higher dimensional world with me, you will understand all this. The Dimension Ascension Plan, the Dimension Ascension Plan is. Hermes' consciousness suddenly fell silent. After a moment, his tone seemed to be a different person. All the anger, fear, and panic had disappeared, leaving only calm. The plan to expand the dimension is not feasible. I remember, I already knew the answer, but I didn't want to believe it. I've been deceiving myself, I've been deceiving myself. Kaylan could clearly feel that the black bead suddenly stopped struggling. Immediately afterwards, the number of consciousness bodies inside the bead was rapidly decreasing, and the corrosive power attached to the bead was also weakening at an alarming speed. Purification, Kaylan was slightly startled. No, that's not right, it's neutralization. Those disappearing consciousnesses neutralized his brand at the expense of themselves. They are awake, the fool's holographic projection said, Hermes, and the other corrupted members of the crew. At the same time, in the command post of the Survivor Alliance ground forces, General Maginot, who had lost consciousness not long ago, opened his eyes and sat up from the ground with some difficulty. As soon as Maginot regained consciousness, he quickly reached out his hand to his cheek. Maginot clearly remembered that before he fell into coma, a bunch of grape-like sarcomas appeared on his face. The sarcomas were also wrapped with things like glass beads, and they would rotate uncontrollably. He knew that those were the extra eyeballs that grew after the mutation. He knew that he could not escape this disaster, but now, the hands on his face could not touch anything. Apart from a slightly excessive amount of subcutaneous fat, Maginot's face contained nothing. Is everything just an illusion? Maginot murmured to himself. In shock, he searched around on his body, but still found no signs of mutation. What is going on? General, are you okay? Levi also woke up and reached out to cover his head. My head hurts. P.S. Thanks to He1EM for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 1078. How do I remember? We all seem to be infected by that thing. Maginot rubbed his forehead vigorously. The headache symptoms not only appeared on Levi, Maginot also felt the same. I had a splitting headache. Levi, do you see any changes in me? No. No, Levi shook his head. General, do you think I have any mutations? I can't tell. Maginot sat on the ground, his heart pounding. He was really confused for a while. He clearly thought that he was dead, but now he miraculously recovered. It's like nothing happened. He tried his best to suppress the luck in his heart that he would survive the disaster, for fear that there would be some changes. He raised his head and carefully looked around. The headquarters was still the same familiar one, but the officers who had stayed here had changed. When it happened, they were all sent out by him, and he and Levi were the only two people left in the entire command headquarters. Levi climbed up with some reluctance, holding onto the floor, and picked up the communication terminal on the side. He only glanced at it and said in surprise, General. Then, those officers and soldiers who had mutated their bodies have all returned to normal. Got it? Everyone has recovered. Maginot was stunned for a moment, staggered out of the command center, and looked thoughtfully in the direction of the ark. The core area of the ark, the overlapping space holy ark. The beads made of compressed meat began to spontaneously ignite, and the crystal clear flames gradually removed the black inside the beads, turning them into transparent colors like energy crystals. Kaylan could feel that in this crystallized the inside of the bead contained an extremely terrifying energy, so much so that he had never dared to lift the space barrier that imprisoned it, for fear that the energy inside would escape and cause unpredictable damage. 0.035 units of God-level energy. The fool's holographic projection said softly, this is a completely ownerless God-level energy purified using the consciousness bodies of tens of millions of people as the fuel to neutralize the brand. Energy. 0.3 and 5 units of God-level energy may not sound like much, but if converted into regular energy units, it is an astronomical number. You know, even the fool's body only consumed 0.002 units of alien energy. These 0.035 units, if used to charge the Star Destroyer cannon, would probably be enough to activate the Star Destroyer cannon in strafing mode like a Gatling gun. Of course, the premise is that the launch mechanism of the Star Destroyer cannon can withstand such a violent energy impact. Is this what Hermes left to human civilization in his last waking hours? Kaylan stretched out his hand, and the crystallized bead slowly floated to the top of his palm. The crystal clear flame like a special effect has disappeared, and the energy inside the bead has also entered a relatively stable state. If this was a super bomb that could explode at any time a second ago, now it became an energy crystal with unimaginably huge reserves. He also left something else. The fool's projection shook his head, and as the surrounding space distorted, a safe forged from nano alloy appeared on the ground. What's this? Kaylan condensed the power of space into a thin thread and got in through the keyhole of the safe. This safe used a very ancient mechanical lock, which is even required by most confidential safes today. There was no self-destruction device on hand, so Kaylan directly used space power to crush the lock and lift the lid. Lying in the black shockproof sponge is a crystal chip that is only the size of a fingernail. There is a metal etched label attached to the surface of the chip, with only the letter gamma on it. This is the third Greek letter, but when this letter appears here, Kaylan doesn't understand what it means. The original genetic code of the gamma-type replicator, the fool said. This is a new generation of modified humans secretly developed by Hermes to supplement the lost population. Compared with the beta-type replicator, the gamma-type replicator does not exist. Gene defects can lead to the same lifespan as normal humans. Moreover, genes also have the possibility of natural evolution. It only takes 3 to 4 generations for the offspring of gamma replicators to fully integrate into natural humans. This can no longer be considered a clone. Kaylan walked over and picked up the safe containing the chip. In this way, the population crisis that will break out in the future can also be solved. You must know that the replicas created by using this genetic code will be young adults who meet the reproductive conditions when they are born. As long as they can be given the same rights as normal people, they only need to be implanted with the basic common sense and various aspects of human society. Work skills, even if they are not given false memories, they can quickly integrate into human society. There may be a period of pain, but just like the new biotechnologies such as artificially cultivating embryos and transforming humans, once accepted by the public, the existence of gamma replicators will soon become commonplace. After all, this batch of clones has no genetic defects. Except for the missing childhood and youth, everything else is exactly the same as a naturally born human being. Actually, after sacrificing a large number of beta-type clones in the battle at the ruins of the ancient Copper City, Hermes and the others planned to put the gamma-type clones into production, but your actions are more complicated than theirs. One step faster, so they had to wake up the tree of destruction in advance, the fool said. As the personality that remains within the core mastermind, no one knows better than him what the undead crew will do during this time. I have another question that I still don't have an answer to. Kaylan looked at the projection that looked exactly like him, who killed Pan in the battle at the ruins of the ancient Bronze City. It's me, the fool said. The special ability that Pan gained after being corroded is insight. He realized that you are actually one of the carriers of the fool's personality, rather than a simple experimental body. He originally planned to observe you for a period of time. If I tell Hermes and others this news, I can only choose to kill him. As for Hermes, Zeus, and others, their bodies had already been transformed into corpses at that time, and ordinary toxins were ineffective against them. And after Pan's death, they also became suspicious of the core mastermind, and even gave up part of the functions of the core master brain. Have closed most of the core master brain's permissions. I am able to appear here thanks to another carrier of the fool's personality who arrived in the Blackwell and helped me unlock those closed permissions. That information dealer. Yes. Then, how is he doing now? His transformation into a corpse is irreversible. After completing his final mission, he chose to harmlessly dispose himself. Harmless treatment. Neutralize with the energy of the alien god and directly erase the mark of that existence on yourself. What about others? Although Kaylan had already guessed the outcome of the information dealer, he still couldn't help but ask. He was still a little reluctant to accept his inner guess until he heard the answer with his own ears. Like Hermes, he was annihilated by the energy released during neutralization. The fool's holographic projection said, "There is nothing left." Okay, then what should we do with those particles containing corrosive memes that Hermes just released? To be precise, those things have nothing to do with erosion. They are one of the special abilities Plague obtained after Hermes was transformed into a corpse. After Hermes is completely destroyed, the Plague will naturally be lifted automatically. So it's all over. It's all over. Alpha Star, South Pole, Polar Sea ice caps. Click. A small crack appeared on the ice sheet. Caca. The cracks began to gradually expand and spread to all directions. The temperature over the Polar Sea has not changed, still maintaining a temperature of -87 degrees Celsius. However, there are signs of melting in the cracked areas of the ice cap. A black hexagonal stone pillar with a diameter of more than 10 meters slowly rose from under the ice cap, and was finally fixed at a height of 150 meters. 6 gaps suddenly opened at the edges of the hexagonal stone pillar, and an aura far more terrifying than that of the prehistoric species emanated from the interior of the stone pillar. With the hexagonal stone pillar as the center, a bright red color covers the ice cap of the Polar Sea. That lizard trapped under the glacier, is it no longer on this planet? A very ancient language sounded over the Polar Sea. Hey, those bugs on this planet seem to be, there have been some interesting changes. Complete book. Final words. Logically speaking, the final reflection should be a separate chapter. However, for the final reflection of my last book, Wasteland Survival Code, I posted a single chapter 3 times and was blocked 3 times. This time I decided to post it just to be on the safe side. Attached to the end of the main text. Since it takes up part of the text, I'll keep it as short as possible. I revised the ending of Alien Ruin Hunter several times, and finally scrapped the original bad end plan at the beginning and changed it to the current open ending. As Kaylan said, although the probability of human civilization successfully resisting gods is infinitely close to 0, it is not directly equal to 0 after all. The Ark civilization may eventually escape the control of the gods, or even ascend to a higher dimension, but it is more likely that it will fall short like countless human civilizations in other parallel time and space. When facing an enemy that is so powerful that it completely exceeds cognition, failure is the norm. Countless human civilizations have perished in different universes, and the vast majority of them have not even left the legacy of civilization or traces of their existence. After all, a civilization like the Alpha civilization that can pass the baton to the Ark civilization is already considered one of 1,000. Although this book is classified as science fiction, the selection of materials from the beginning was biased towards the Cthulhu style. I personally think that the 2 biggest characteristics of Cthulhu-type works are, 1. The fear of unknown and indescribable things, 2. The sense of despair that cannot be resisted despite all efforts. The latter is the keynote of most orthodox Cthulhu works. In front of the ancient gods, human beings are too small and insignificant. But this is an online novel after all. In this era of cool writing, novels with a slightly slower pace can easily be eliminated by the environment. As for those authors who abuse their protagonists and write B, they should not be scolded too badly. The open ending is to add a little bit of hope, a little bit of possibility to the overall tone of despair. Of course, it is also due to the limitation of space. Even if I have to write about the Ark civilization that finally reaches the dimension where the gods are, plus counting the gods' families and other civilizations in the parallel world, at my unbeatable speed of 4,000 per day, I want to write those plots. I'm afraid it won't take 10 years to write, and the subsequent plot will significantly deviate from the theme of ruin hunters. If the length is too long, it will become a grandmother's foot binding. If the length is too short, it will have to be crazy and cheating, and the combat power system will completely collapse by the end of the writing. I may write a sequel, but even if I do, it will be a new book. This is my second work with over 1 million words. I deeply feel that my ability to master long-form plots still needs to be trained. To put it bluntly, my writing skills are not enough. If I really want to write a work with thousands of words, with my current level, it's definitely impossible to control. The theme of the next book has been finalized, and I am currently refining the outline and character design. In addition, I also plan to take advantage of the May Day holiday to give myself a short holiday and rest for 7 or 8 days. The new book is expected to be online in mid-May, so you can look forward to it. One time. Current progress, creating a new folder. As for my physical problems that old readers are concerned about, it will be 4 years since I was diagnosed with M5B leukemia in 2.5 months. During these 4 years, I have had blood drawn every month and bone puncture done every 6 months. The re-examination results have always been very good. As long as there is no recurrence for 5 years, it will be considered clinically cured, and it can be regarded as a person who has been through the gate of hell. Okay, I've almost said what I need to say. I calculated the word count and found that this final review is exactly 1,000 words. If there is no VIP level, it will cost readers about 5 cents more. In order to compensate everyone, I will write it later. Several extra short stories about alien ruin hunters are released completely free of charge. If you are interested, you can pay attention to them. As for the extra plots you want to see, you can also leave a message here and I will try my best to meet your requests. For example, part of the interstellar drifting plot in the prequel, the plot before the Fool did not join the undead crew, the plot before the Ark was built and set sail, the story of the Hive civilization and Alpha civilization, some plots after the end of the main text, and even human civilizations in different parallel time and space. The story, any plot related to the worldview of the alien ruins hunter may appear in the extras. Finally, thank you all for reading, and I hope you can continue to support my next book.